Hello, my friends. Lori Ashcraft here. I'm your host for Viva La Evolution, which is sponsored by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. So welcome. So happy to have you. And today we are being joined by a woman, see if you can guess, a woman who changed the trajectory of mental health services by showing us how we, people in recovery, can do things ourselves to bring about our recovery and sustain our recovery. And before she did her work, there wasn't a lot out there that that assured us that we have an active role in the healing process. I just remember my own experience of just feeling like a victim of my mental illness and taking medication, thinking it would, knowing that it kept me from going over the edge, but that wasn't recovery. That was just holding on to the edge, basically. I could function pretty well, but it was just, I would say my personal growth suffered from it. And then she comes along and teaches us ways to participate actively and effectively in our recovery. By now, I'm sure you've guessed, this is Mary Ellen Copeland. Oh, okay. And Mary Ellen is still active. She and Ed still contribute in ways that are meaningful. And yeah, you're going to love this. Let me just tell you a little bit about the learning objectives. I've got them written down so I don't make a mistake. Marilyn's going to talk about the foundation of peer support and how WRAP came into being. She tells her own personal story about that, and how, if you haven't heard that story, it's very heartwarming and inspiring. Then we're going to talk about the role of peer support in crisis situations. Now, we talked about this a little bit last time with Harvey and Lynn. So it's a theme that is not is general. In other words, a lot of us know this is important. And so Mary Ellen is on that one. Exploring the impact of peer support in forensic and prison settings. She's done some work there. And the work I've done in prisons, I would say, is the most heartwarming work I've done. And Mary Ellen has a lot of experience with that. Then she's also an advocate of trauma-informed care. So she'll be talking a little bit about that. And then finally, ensuring the sustainability and integrity of peer support programs. Again, this is something that Harvey and Lynn talked about last time. It's something a lot of us recognize as important and are paying attention to, trying to bring more support and support for peer programs. Okay, so that's probably enough for me, maybe too much for me. So thank you for listening. We'll get on with it. And please subscribe. That would help us out a lot. And so here we go. Here's Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, I am so honored to have you join us. You have been such an important person in my life over many, many years. And the Crestwood folks absolutely adore you. So
I like them a lot too. I like them really a lot.
They're precious.
Yes, good people.
Yeah. So, we can do whatever you want, but I was thinking, if you're up for it, if you could just start by telling your own recovery story a little bit and about the birth of WRAP and how that all came about. And then we can move on from there. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, it's a long story.
Okay.
But I'll do what I can to pull it in a bit. Back in the 1980s, I'd had various circumstances in my life that caused me to be experiencing a lot of depression and a lot of really difficult mental health issues. I got involved with some doctors and was taking some medications, had some hospitalizations. Nothing was working very well, and I was continuing to have very highs and lows and various mental health difficulties. And so in thinking about that, I thought I knew that my mother had mental health difficulties for a lot of years, and that she was in a hospital for 8 years when I was growing up. Actually, I didn't really grow up with my mother, and but she got well. She got a job as a dietitian, which was her field. She came back into the family. She developed friends, and she had 40 good years of life. When I was about 8 years old, there was a lot of difficulty in our family. And I had an older brother who had a hard time getting along. And my mother had all this, within short order, she had 5 children, and she had been to college, and she had wanted to have a career. And my father wasn't happy about her having a career. And she started having more and more depression and more difficulties, and she went to doctors and for help, and eventually ended up in the state hospital for 8 years. And when she was there, a volunteer came in, and he encouraged her to talk. She hadn't been talking to anybody, and he encouraged her to talk. And when she would say, "No, I'm not supposed to talk," and he said, "Yes, this is really good for you. Come on, Kate, you can talk." And she said, some Pennsylvania Dutch people don't talk, and they'll talk about their feelings. This volunteer got her to talk, and she talked and talked and talked, and she was doing better and better and better, and she was out interacting with the other people in the facility. And she started getting people together in groups, and they started having peer support groups. And this was way back. This would have been, well, I was born in 1941, and I was 16 at the time. So that would have shown you how many years ago that was. So it was a long time ago. And the people at the hospital became very uncomfortable with her because she was getting all these people together. And so they discharged her.
Yes.
And so she came home, and she was doing, and it was, when I think about it, we all could have done it. It was almost like a reentry from prison. We do a lot of reentry for people from prison now, and do some reentry work for people who've been hospitalized for long periods of time. There was no program like that. There was nothing like that for her. And so she had to figure it all out for herself. And when I think about what we, as her children and her family, did to help her, it wasn't much. We could have done much better if we had known.
Yeah.
But she got herself a job in working. She was one of the first people to graduate from Penn State. And so not the first people, the first woman.
Yeah.
She and her cousin, who lived across the road, were the
Wow.
first women to graduate from Penn State.
That's amazing. I didn't know that part of the story.
There's these pictures of, all the graduates, and it's all men, except for these 2 women sitting in the front. And it's Kate and Nellie. And my mother is Kate.
Yeah.
And so she got herself a job. We were all pretty much grown up by that time. And she worked in the schools, and they liked what she did so much. She became the head dietitian in the New Haven, Connecticut schools. And then when she was retiring, she was a dietitian in nursing homes. She had a career, a wonderful career that was really fulfilling. And through all of that, she knew that she had to have contacts with people. So she called people, she talked to people, she encouraged other people to talk, and that became really her mode of operation,
Mm.
connection.
Yeah.
And I think that served her really well. By the time she died, she was very well known in the community for all of the things, like if there was a fire, she was the person that was out there with the sandwiches for the fire department. If anybody was in trouble, she was always there. Everybody knew her. And at her memorial service, there wasn't room in the church, and there were people outside trying to get in
Yeah.
because she had done so well in her life.
Mhm.
So when I started having the same experiences in my life, I knew from what I had seen happen with my mother, um, that this didn't have to be the end of the road for me, and that there must be answers. So I went to the doctor and said, where can I get information on how people who have these kinds of conditions help themselves? And he said, I'll tell you next time. I'll look this up for you and I'll have information the next time. So I went back the next time, and he had hoped that I had forgotten because I said, I'd like that information. He said, we don't have information like that. We don't have any information on things you can do to help yourself. We only have information on medications. We have information on hospital programs. We have information on electroshock therapy, but we don't have information on how people help themselves. And I became convinced that that information was really vital, and that the only place that you were going to get that was from other people who were living with these kinds of issues. So I was
You know, I
working
think at the time, Mary Ellen, there was no belief that we could help ourselves. We were
that
patients. We were just supposed to try and take our pills.
absolutely when I started doing this work and developing this body of knowledge, I was told that I was giving people false hope, and that there was no hope for people who had these kinds of things, and that I needed to stop doing that. Um, but I persisted.
Thank
And
goodness.
yeah, and I I got a Social Security pass plan, which gave me money to develop booklets. They were very from today's standards with research, they were very primitive.
Mhm.
And yet, from those very booklets, even some researchers even made fun of them. They said people are not going to respond to this. It's no good. They said I had to ask questions and then have a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 answer. And I said, I don't even yet know what the questions are. I need to ask some questions before I can
Yeah,
the
yeah,
questions.
yeah.
And so what I did was I set up a booklet that had open-ended questions and had so that people could write out their answers. And I had 100 volunteers. People volunteered. I was amazed. And they back in those days in the 1980s, I couldn't do that online. This was not something I could put out through Facebook and put it all over the country quickly. And then people had to send me postcard or a letter or call me. I couldn't compile it on a computer. Um, so it was a slow process, but I developed the one booklet, sent it out to the 100 people who responded, and their answers were amazing. And
Oh,
from those responses, I developed more questions for a second set um, of questions to send out to people. And then those came back. And from that, I did a third round. So I did 3 rounds of open-ended questions and finally came to what I felt were some really surefire answers that would be helpful to people over time. So I I compiled those together and put them out in a very rough kind of book. And at that time, the people from the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, the Vermont chapter, were very supportive of my work. And so they made arrangements for me to go and share what I had learned at the national conference. So I was quite excited. I hadn't been traveled to a big conference in a long time.
Well, let's just back up a little bit. I'm
Yeah,
remembering that while you're compiling all this stuff, you weren't feeling very well yourself, even. So
that's true.
you were fighting against,
Yeah.
not feeling well, struggling with your own situation, and yet still plodding through this a little bit at a time. That
And
I love that about you, Mary Ellen. That's just
thanks. I just plod along, get things done.
just stay
Um,
with something till it works.
yeah, it was a hard go. It was really because I didn't have the support of my healthcare professionals. They said I was really on the totally wrong track. And when I went to the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill conference, which I was very excited about, I there were all these big ballrooms and people came and went from the the different workshops. And they had my workshop, which was scheduled just as prominently as the others, but they had it scheduled. They had taken, it was a big fancy hotel, and they'd taken one of the guest rooms and taken the beds out because they didn't think anybody would come. So, so I started talking about this stuff, and there were a few people there to start. And as I continued, those people who you see at conferences who run around and look for where's something interesting,
Yes,
they,
yes. I'm one of those people.
yeah, we all do it. We all do it. And and they started landing in this room, and pretty soon there were people out in the hall, and
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Bill Hood from Chicago, who I didn't know at that point, wanted to videotape it, and he videotaped it, and it was very successful. And from that, I started gathering names of people, writing to them, and began sharing this information that I even compiled. And I took it and I started, uh, various places called me and said, can you come? I went to Alaska. I did a lot of work in New Hampshire. I started doing work in Vermont. Um, and
And I remember you came to Phoenix. I called and begged you. And
but when was that, do you
I
think?
don't know. Oh gosh, it was probably maybe 99, 98, 99.
That was I've been at it for 10 years by that time.
Oh, wow, okay.
So before that I did the work in I did the whole series in New Hampshire and then Vermont, picked up the ball with it, and I did some more in Vermont, going around, and I set up a series of 8 workshops, and people would come for 8 sessions. It was usually um, part of a mental health system. And in New Hampshire, they did it in every county, and they had me come to do a presentation in every county.
Was it
And
called WRAP yet?
no, no,
Okay.
no, 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 WRAP comes next because I went to New Hampshire and did these 8-day workshops. And if New Hampshire does something, then Vermont follows. If Vermont does something, New Hampshire follows. So,
Okay.
so, Vermont followed suit, and they did it in three regions. And so in the winter of 1997, we did a whole series in northern Vermont, 8 full days, snowstorms, ice, cold, drafty building, people who were having lots and lots of mental health difficulties. And we worked and worked through all of this time. And at the end a woman stood up and said, I've been in mental hospitals across the country, and I wouldn't have any idea how to organize this into my life. She said, it's good stuff, but I wouldn't have a clue how to get this going. So that was when state of Vermont gave us money for 3 more days. Those people came back in spite of the fact that many of them were having a lot of difficulties. And we worked together, that group, for another 3 full days. And by the end of the time, we had it built. We had WRAP. People said we need a list of all of the things we can do to help ourselves. We need to, that's the wellness tools, and that we need the wellness toolbox. And then we need a description of ourselves when we're well, because some of us don't even remember that. That's when people said, people can make this up if they want to. And then we went to what are the things they decided we need certain things we're going to need to do every day if we're going to stay as well as possible. And I'd become aware of that for myself as well. So that was a daily maintenance plan. And then people said, there's these things that happen, like these days it would be listening to the news, but it could be seeing a bad accident, being in an accident, being sick, having somebody else having a hard time, having a huge disappointment, having a big loss, losing a pet, just many, many things that can suddenly happen. You can be riding on the bus and you can see an accident. It can be very, very upsetting. And they said, we need to be aware that those things happen. We may not be able to write them all down, but we need to because we can't really predict what they might be, but we write down a bunch of them. And then we need to think about which of these wellness tools could we use at that time. What's immediately available to us, like deep breathing, meditation, calling a friend. What are the things that we could do? So that's where the plan moved from being just a daily plan to different plans that you use in different circumstances. So then they said, what about those times when we might not really know why, but we just don't feel right? And we decided that those were early warning signs, and that if we paid attention to those, we might not get any worse. So people came up with what that might be. What were some of the things, like for me, if I stop, but if I don't automatically buckle my seatbelt, or if I start driving along and I haven't buckled my seatbelt, if I'm in town and I realize I'm not looking both ways when I cross the street, I'm avoiding people that I know, and I'm avoiding doing things to take care of myself. I know that for me, those are early warning signs. So then I have a plan of things that I do, made up of wellness tools, that I do if I feel that way, and I do them until I feel better. And that's what people came up with. And we all found that it works. Yeah. And then the thing was,
I had a WRAP for years and used judiciously until it became part of me.
Yeah, I think that's what happens with it. I think you don't have to have your book so much anymore sitting beside you, but it's a way, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, and what I found over time in teaching this, that the first, those, what we need to do every day, the things that might upset us, they're calling those stressors now, because SAMHSA said we can't use the word triggers anymore. And early warning signs, that's all well and good, but what do? We really don't want to get into that place where we're having a crisis, where they come and pick us up and take us away, or where they have to heavily medicate us, or we need some other invasive treatment. We really would like not to go there. So people called that section, when things are breaking down, actually the other thing they called it was when things are going to hell in a handbasket.
I never heard that one. I just heard breaking down. It must have
Yeah.
gotten cleaned up by the time I got it.
Yeah, right. Anyway, they said when things are going to hell in a handbasket, and we really looked at those wellness tools at that time and carefully and said, some of these would be of no help at all at that time, and others of these we might want to use repeatedly, and some we might want to consider. People felt that if they came up with a really clear plan of what to do, that they could keep themselves from jumping over into a crisis where somebody else has to take over. So if you can get it, if you can work with when things are breaking down, then you don't have to go into that crisis mode. You can back up and be back feeling good again. And people were finding that that worked. And I heard that a lot, that worked. And it almost became, I think, when things are breaking down, became, in addition to the list of wellness tools, kind of the most important part of WRAP for people, that it gave them self-agency. They said, we can do this for ourselves. We know that if, for instance, if you're having a really bad time, you want to be sure you eat your 3 meals a day, but you may want to spend, for me, I might spend 2 hours working on a quilt and an hour reading a book that I love to read and calling and talking it to specific people. Nowadays, it's much better because we can have Zoom with people. So,
Yes.
so they can really see somebody, or that have this very specific plan that like brings me back out so that I'm feeling much better. And people just reported such great success with that.
Mhm.
And it was really, to me, it just was such a wonderful thing for people to know that they had the resources, so that when they felt really badly, it didn't mean that their whole life was going to fall apart,
Mhm.
but that they had what it would take. And then they said, there may be a time when things do get ahead of us and we need somebody else to take over for us. And they came up with a very clear crisis plan that included who they wanted when they wanted somebody to take over for them, who they wanted to take over for them, who they did not want to take over for them, which was very important,
Yes.
and who their doctors were, where was their pharmacy, who should be called, what are the things I need you to do for me that would be really helpful, and what do I not want you to do? And we came up with a good form for that, and people found that worked really well. But as they used the rest of the plan, they hardly they didn't need to use it so
You
often.
needed that much. Another important part of that crisis plan that I thought was brilliant is when to stop taking care of me. Because
Yes, I think that's yes,
sometimes people their own needs get met by taking care of us, and
right,
they love us, so they want to keep, but we need to leave me alone now. I need to emerge. Is a
right.
great part of the plan.
That part, yeah, and what are the things that here are the things I'd like you to do for me, and please don't do this for me. You may
Yeah,
think this helps.
yeah.
I remember one time when I was having a very difficult time, and so use the plan. So actually, I had told my counselor I was having a really difficult time, and as the plan went, she was supposed to call certain people. So people started coming over and staying with me. One very good friend came over, and she started chattering, and she chattered for the whole time she was there. I heard how she went to what happened to her when she went to get her hair cut and exactly what they talked about, every little detail. By the time she left, I was much worse. So we need to be clear about that. Don't chatter to me. Don't, if we're
Yeah.
going to, you could say, give me time to talk and you can take time to talk, but no chattering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I found I might not have learned those things if it had not been for all these people teaching me these things. So for myself, it was very, very helpful.
I think this whole thing, it's like an idea whose time had come.
Mhm,
Because I think so many of us, um, at some unconscious level, knew there were things we could do to help ourselves,
mhm.
but we didn't have the confidence to do it, and nobody supported us in doing it.
There was absolutely no support. There was no support.
When you
My,
put this together, you broke through a whole layer of I don't know what to call it, a whole mindset that just freed us up so remarkably. And I remember for myself thinking, I remember just thinking, knowing that I had these symptoms and that I was taking medication and I was thinking, if I stop taking these pills, it's like this illness could come out and scare me and everybody else.
Mhm.
So I kind of looked and felt okay, but I had this underlying fear that was perpetuated by my helpers, my healing helpers.
Well, yeah,
But then,
by the system.
yeah, but after the wrap sunk in for me and I
Mhm.
started using it, it's like that fear went away and
Because
I
resource.
became bigger than the symptoms.
Mhm,
And I don't think I could have gotten there without wrap.
mhm,
I don't think I could have.
mhm.
Yeah. So thank you.
Ed was saying to me this morning, I was saying, this is a hard time. This is a hard time for a lot of people, and me too. And he says, "How about using a wellness tool every hour?" So that could be in my when things are breaking down. Choose
Yes.
wellness tool and use
Yes.
it every hour. I have a friend, and I don't know if you ever met Carol Bailey Floyd.
Mm.
Um,
Name's familiar, but I can't place her.
she she lives rap. She's had a very difficult time in her life, both with her parent that had extremes of mood, and then she had extremes of mood. And um, she has brought that all in. For a long time, she was actually a WRAP facilitator. Um, her days are literally filled with wellness tools.
Mm.
I saw her on Facebook this morning, and she was all excited because it was the first day of spring, and she had her spring outfit on. She really but she will have a list of activities for the day of people that she gets together with, and she lives it, and she set up a website, and the website is called Celebrate Possibilities. What do they call those? A blog? Anyway, on that website, she's collected over 800 wellness tools. She collects
Oh,
wellness, and then
oh,
she's always looking for wellness tools. Her wellness tool will be what she wears that day. It will be who she's getting together with. It'll be what book she's reading. It will be what activity, who she's going to be taking grocery shopping,
oh,
who's she helping out, what's she going to do with her family. She has she just goes on and on with them.
oh, okay, good.
Yeah, she'd be she'd be a good one to do one of these with.
Well,
You
maybe
would,
we'll do that too. Yeah.
yeah,
If she wants
yeah,
to.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Um she got into, I don't know if you were ever around when people started doing Zen tangles, and
Yes, I remember that. I
she was
wasn't good at it, but my friends were.
yeah, she does that all the time. Um
Mm.
and she got into a laughing group, and where they practice being able to laugh. She just does whatever she feels like that's or whatever her rap tells her that she needs to do.
Yeah.
And she she really lives it. So, and it's exciting how many people use it these days and how much it's grown. And since 1997, it's 25 years now.
Well,
Um,
we'll talk a little bit I kind of remember the story, but there's a story about how it got its name. I think you and Alan came up with it.
Yes, I think Alan and I came up with it. I don't remember much story connected to it. Wellness Recovery Action Plan, I think it kind of evolved over those 3 days that we worked together. It was right there at the beginning,
Yes.
was that.
I just remember, I can't remember it very well either, but how you picked each word, like we need to have action. And you said
Yes,
wellness
we need,
and
and
recover
recover,
during this
right. And
process.
plan, it really has worked out beautifully as a,
Yeah.
as a, as a, acronym. It's been really good. So,
Yes. Mhm.
and I'm pleased with these days, how it seems to be really, it goes kind of through cycles where it wanes a little bit sometimes. Now it seems to be in a very, really a growth phase. There's a lot going on around the world. There's a lot going on in Ireland,
Mm. Mm.
in Belgium,
Mm.
um, Amsterdam. Um, well, there's a lot going on in Japan. Um,
Ah. Oh,
so it's,
wonderful.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's really, um, it's, 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 it's doing very well.
You know, let's talk a little bit because I know it was the basic plan, but then you went on to develop like WRAP for work, WRAP if you get hospitalized. Um, there's a bunch of different specific WRAPs, aren't there? Can you talk a little bit about those?
There are, and some of them were just that I used at workshops, but some of them evolved into books. There's one WRAP for veterans, um, WRAP for people who are in reentry process, who've been in prison. We actually have, there's a lot of WRAP work going on right now in the prison systems
Mm.
across the country, which is wonderful. So WRAP for reentry, a couple of people that I'm closely connected with who were in prison for 27 years, a couple of brothers were
Wow.
in prison for a crime they didn't commit. Um, they have written a book um, about they became WRAP facilitators and facilitated WRAP in
Oh,
prison. And now they're out and they're teaching WRAP and they've written a book about it. And that's going to be coming out sometime in the next year or so, I
oh
think.
gosh, we want to make sure we give that, shine the light on that when that comes out.
Yes, yes, yes. So there's one for families. There's one for people who've been traumatized. Um, there's one for people who are aging. There's some work being done now specifically for people for postpartum
Mm.
issues.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Ed, can you think of what are some of the others?
Developmental distinction.
Developmental distinctions. That one is currently being revised.
Mm. Mm.
One of the things that has happened over the time that WRAP has existed is also that technology has come along. And so a lot of the wellness tools, like in WRAP for developmental distinctions, there's a lot of resources that people can use and gadgets and technological
Mhm.
gadgets that
Apps
people
and so forth, probably.
are
Apps.
apps and yeah, but they also use their computers. Like when we did the education, well, when Hope, there was Hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support, the basic key concepts of mental health recovery that I found through my research, and that the education piece has changed dramatically because
Mm.
I told people you need to go to the library, you need to sign up, have people mail in these mail you mental health newsletters and go to the library and find your books and things. And people just go online now and learn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they can also, you can do puzzles online. And some people get kind of addicted to video games, but sometimes a video game can be a wellness tool. So there's a lot more available. There's people can get lots of support
Mhm.
online.
Mhm.
So they don't have to go out. And I have a group of women that I meet with every week for an hour. The oldest one is 98. I'm the youngest. I'm
Hmm.
80. There's a 90-year-old and a 91-year-old. And we get together and it's the best thing and it's a wonderful
Oh,
wellness. But we couldn't have done that. Um, we couldn't have, no one I think could have predicted how quickly we were going to be able to do the kind of thing that you and I are doing right now.
yeah. Mm.
Which
I just think, I keep thinking of this, another movement that preceded the WRAP movement in the 30s was the AA movement.
yes, exactly.
Movement.
Hmm.
Same
Hmm.
thing happened there. It got off to a very rocky start.
Absolutely.
Anybody could get over anything. And
Hmm.
finally, Bill Wilson comes up with the 12 steps. They
Hmm.
write a book. Uh, Nobody buys it.
Right.
And then, just because it's the right thing, it takes off.
Hmm.
And now there's anonymous programs for debtors, for drug users, for overeaters, for um, overspenders, for shoppers, it's the same kind of idea. It's like once the right idea pops up,
Yeah,
then it keeps
it catches
growing.
on.
And
It catches on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's really very exciting. It's so wonderful to know that there's answers, that there's
yes, yes.
simple, safe, non-invasive things that you can do to help yourself.
And that's the key. I
So,
mean,
um,
that's what you unveiled that was just like waiting to pop, I think. And that's you can actually do something yourself to get better.
right, right,
Because
right,
until you did this work, nobody said that to any of us.
right,
That was
right.
not
We were just left
yeah,
out to dry. It was
yeah,
kind of a whole separate segment of the population that was um, just not, oh, okay, we were just not expected to thrive.
right. No, we weren't. We were, in fact, something Bill Anthony used to point out frequently is the older textbooks, and by older I mean like in the 70s, said
Yes,
we would
right.
only get worse.
Yes. There was a
Prognosis.
whole decade of the brain where they tried to prove that our brains were broken and
Yes, yes.
and
You
it
go to
failed.
a conference and these young little intern guys were up there with their slides with the
Yep.
brains on them, and the brains were shrinking, and yeah.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Yeah.
Um, and they went through the whole broken brain thing and came out with nothing. So
Right.
which was a good thing.
Then we figured out neuroplasticity, which is a whole other side of the shrinking
But I
brain.
think with the neuroplasticity, we're doing that for ourselves. We're figuring out how to, that by walking every day, we're helping ourselves. That all of that is was working in our favor if we're eating right, if we're not smoking all the time, if we're hanging out with people who treat us well. I think our brains change, but nobody
Yeah,
can go to
they
look at.
do. That's what the research says now.
Yeah,
We're done with the broken brain thing. So
right.
I
So
think I
that
that.
sort of died. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was good.
Well,
So
beyond rap, you've done, I know you and Sherry wrote a book about peer support.
we did.
I'll say anything about that.
Um, I think the way of being that we described in that book, and that actually Sherry's not able to teach anymore, but her partner teaches, Chris Hansen, and they teach intentional peer support. Um, that way of doing things and being that we described has sort of just become the way it's happening. It was, and I think that's where we got the information. I know it is where we got the information from all of the places that we went and all the people that we taught. Um, and we had a difficult time at the beginning. Um, Sherry and I were invited to talk to take part in an early when people were just starting to talk about peer support, and it was actually in the early 2000s. And we went to Washington D.C. and they had a couple big tables pushed together and all these experts sitting around, and everybody went around and introduced themselves, and all came from very medical and psychological kinds of constructs.
Was
And
this a
here was,
SAMHSA thing or something?
yeah, it was a SAMHSA thing. They had somebody there that was documenting the whole thing. They were taking pictures of it. And Sherry and I sat there for the whole day, and nothing was about people talking to each other or being with each other. It's a 2-day thing.
I can't
And
imagine you and Sherry being quiet that long.
well, we weren't quiet afterward.
Okay.
So we talked afterward, and we went to the woman who was the moderator. We said, we have a plan. We think this isn't going very well. We think it's all just medical model professional stuff, and we're just really, it's not very helpful. And that's not what we came to Washington for. And we asked if we could have the opportunity to start the program the next day by doing a role play.
Oh, good.
Um,
Good.
well, they said, oh, no, there's no way we can let you do a role play. We have our program. This is what we're doing. And we said, but it's not working. You're not getting any place. Finally, they agreed. So, um, so Sherry was the healthcare provider in our little role play. And I came in and started talking about, I said, this is it. I'm done. I'm not going to live anymore. I just came in to say goodbye to you. You've been helpful, but I'm doing this. I was very agitated and very forceful. And so I came rushing in, and so we did that for a while. And Sherry's trying to talk me down. And then we stopped the role play, said, okay, what should happen next to the whole group?
Ah.
The first person raised their hand and said, call the police.
Oh, gosh, of course.
Yeah. It opened the whole thing up, and people started talking then about what can we do in a situation like this to really support somebody and help them get through a difficult time. What could Sherry have done in response to, and we talked about it for the whole day, and it was a much more productive day.
Whole day. You kicked off the whole day with this.
We did.
Yeah.
And from that, I think peer support, there's many people who've come up with peer support programs, and they all, there's certain things we don't want people, telling other people what to do and how to do it. And we want people to figure out answers for themselves. They want people to be listened to, and to be able to speak. There's all of the key things around mental health recovery. To what works and what doesn't is in our relationship and talking to people. And now there's programs everywhere, and as long as they have those basic things, they're great. Intentional peer support is great. There's a lot of peer support that goes on in WRAP training.
Yes.
There's the basic training. People start talking to each other. They learn the values and ethics of WRAP that developed very, very early. Kind of as a cornerstone for all kinds of peer support programs in some form. I'm not saying that that's all developed because of that, but that's what's emerged, that this is what's important. So where it really came from doesn't matter as long as it's out there.
Mary Ellen, what do you see are the next important steps for the peer movement right now? Do you have any ideas about that?
That's an interesting question. I retired in about 2016 and sold the rights, the licenses to particular materials that I had developed in particular programs. I was concerned that they would be modified, that they would be and lose their potential, that they're lose their strength. And so I was looking for somebody to take over the work that I felt could take it forward. And I found that in Advocates for Human Potential. And I think they're doing a magnificent job. I've been working with them since they bought it in 2016, and they're doing a remarkable work. And one of the things I like most is there's no everybody is, they live it, and as they do the work, they follow the values and ethics that were so important. And I don't remember if you what the time frame was year-wise when the values and ethics, when people decided, well, RAP is good, but we have to have some have to have some values to guide us. And like like there's hope for everybody. Like treating every single person with dignity, compassion, and respect. And in these days, especially where we're seeing regression, where people are not being accepted for who they are, where there's a lot of unkindness going on. I think those values and ethics are very important. And those were being changed, which was one of the reasons why it was so important to me to get it into a place where I could feel comfortable that it was being given the care that it deserved. So the work that's going on in the prison system is just makes my heart feel good. I can't imagine such a situation as being in prison. And talking, I spent more time lately with with people who've been in prison, who come to me and say, we've been using your work and we want to meet you. And I've gotten a chance to actually to be really good friends with some of the prisoners who've come out of prison and are now doing exceptional RAP work. Exceptional. One person said to me, I really wasn't a nice guy. I committed my crime. I was not a nice guy. I deserved what I got, but I decided I'm going to be a nice guy from now on. He is an excellent RAP facilitator. He is top line.
I don't think I ever told you this story, but when we were in Arizona, the people in the state hospital, this didn't happen right away because we got a hard time for several years. But at some point, the people in the state hospital came to us and said, would you come and teach RAP to the forensic side in the state hospital? And we said, of course we'll do that.
Yeah.
So we did that. And a couple of months went by and they came back to us and said, would you come and do that again? And we said, well, of course we will. But, the people there that took the class, they could teach this. And they said, are you sure? Do you really think they could? Well, yeah, we've been doing this. And so we know when people can do it. The thing is, we'd have to put them through the peer support training before they could teach RAP.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 2 years went by because they had all these reasons. They didn't have a building. They didn't have this. 2 years out of the blue, they came back and said, okay, we will have you come in and teach peer support and then teach our folks how to be RAP facilitators. We said, okay. So we got our funding through vocational rehabilitation. And they said, well, we're not going to fund that. We don't fund anything with people with a criminal thing.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay. So we had a few other folks that wanted to go through the peer training and become RAP facilitators. And we told them about it. And they said, well, we'll go into the hospital and get trained with these people. So we thought, well, okay, we can bill for you. That'll cover some of our costs and we'll just eat the rest of it. So we went into the hospital, we trained peer support, and then we taught those folks how to be RAP facilitators. And they were so amazing that the staff at the state hospital took turns sitting in on the RAP groups as they were so blown away by the facilitators. And then we said, well, could they come out into the community and be RAP facilitators? And they said, well, I guess, this is a big deal. It wasn't just an overnight thing. So ultimately what happened is I think three or four of the folks in the day, they would leave the state hospital and come out and work for us as a WRAP facilitator someplace.
Mhm.
And then they
Mhm.
go back to the state hospital at night.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, but it worked. It's just the
But
power of the whole thing of peer support and WRAP.
yeah, it just it fits together. It's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Um, this what these um couple of these people who the brothers who Lee and Dennis Horton, who were in prison for 27 years for a crime that they didn't commit, and decided that as they worked to try and get extricated from the system, they needed to still have their lives. And so they learned peer support and WRAP. And then they have a place called The Hole, a place where people who are behaving badly, where they put them. And so they would call them and say, we got somebody in the hole, we want you to go talk to them. So they would go down there and they would teach people these skills and strategies and WRAP and talk and peer support. And before long, there was nobody in the hole anymore
Oh,
because
wow.
they had learned this stuff. When COVID came along, they could use the hole for people who needed to be separated from the
Oh,
rest because they didn't have anybody in there.
yeah.
So
What a great story.
they have Dennis and Lee have and all of my friends who have been incarcerated have amazing stories to tell. And they're human stories. They're not just about related to the prison experience, but they're the human. Um, Dennis and Lee both left behind families, and what's it like to be suddenly have all that taken away from you, and to really be able to show how we can use what we learn here to develop a life. It may not be the life that we want, but we don't want to miss any of this, and so we're going to figure it out. And WRAP was what guided them in figuring it out.
Yes.
One of the big things, as you, I think, probably recall, was that my concern for the work was that would there be people to carry it on?
Yes.
And we talked about that years ago.
Yeah.
And we tried some different ways of making it happen, and some of them kind of imploded. And here we are.
Here we are.
It's going along.
Turned out.
It did turn out. It did
Yeah.
turn out. So it's good. So what else would you like to know?
I think we might have covered it. Anything else you want to add?
Well, there's so much about this work.
I know.
There's so much these days that we're talking a lot about trauma. And I'm really glad that there's a recognition that people who've had very, very bad things happen to them, um, that before we were just saying, people have very, very bad things happen to them. And so they've had all of these signs, things, anxiety and phobias and bad behavior and all of those things. And we've come now we're really recognizing that trauma, that we need to tell our stories, and that helps to relieve the trauma, and we need to but the focus on everything being trauma informed.
Yeah.
So many, even kids who live in a household where they're neglected for years, that's very traumatic. Even if they were not particularly abused, it's very, very hard to.
And I think we've started finally diagnosing thing as trauma instead of a mental illness.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Finally, a long time coming.
Right. Which is, I think, really what I think that was my story. I think that was my mother's story. That was the trauma and not knowing what to do with that.
Yes.
And I still work through those issues.
I can relate to that.
Yep.
Well, we might want to do this again and talk about other things. We got off to a good start here. Well, thank you so much, my dear.
It's nice to see you.
I'm
Lovely.
reminded how much I love you, and how
Thank you.
grateful I
Thank-
am to know you.
So this is really good. It's a good time to reconnect with people
It is.
right now,
Well,
right
we
now.
can.
With goodness, I hope we don't lose that ability. It's a very difficult time in our country, I think, and it's very scary. And so I think we need to be there for each other.
We do.
So
Yeah.
I need to keep the connection strong. I love the people at Crestwood. Every interaction I've had with people at Crestwood has been just lovely. So
I'm going to leave this part in for sure so they can hear that.
yeah, I
They'll be
just
thrilled.
yeah, they're very good people. So
Okay, my dear.
okay.
Well, thank you so much, folks, for being with us. I know every time I hear Mary Ellen's story, it just moves me very deeply. And I'm sure you've had that experience too. So thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to be with you. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks much. Sending you lots of love and joy and peace and all kinds of other good things. And see you next time. Bye-bye.